last week there was supposed to be the Indigenous Comic-Con in Albuquerque. It was like called IndigPopX or something like that. IndigPop. But, since the quarantine, they had to, postpone it like everything else. But a bunch of the artists and guests who were scheduled to be at the con decided to live stream it over Facebook. There was a bunch of interviews with artists and cosplayers, writers. But one thing I watched on there that I found really interesting was a Star Wars panel from a native perspective. It was hosted by Johnny J from A Tribe Called Geek. And it was just a panel of open discussion about Star Wars from Indigenous perspective and how Star Wars sort of relates to, native nerd fans and all the, the Indigenous influences of the Star Wars universe, like how Princess Leia's hairdo, her hairstyle is from Hopi fashion. And some of the alien languages are inspired by native dialect. And so it was really interesting. But one thing I really found fascinating about that whole panel was how they talked about the idea of rebellion and how resistance and activism is an inherent to native culture and history. Since that's the main theme of Star Wars, the rebels taking on the empire, the rebelling against fascism and tyranny. Native Americans have a long history of resisting colonization and imperialism, and that's just a part of who we are. Rebellion and activism has deep roots on Turtle Island. This whole continent is full of indigenous tribes who have all fought to defend their land, food, language, way of life against invaders seeking to enslave them or convert them. And no matter how many times we've lost, we never gave up. We won a few battles. We won some battles, through time. Natives had some badasses leading the resistance, Geronimo, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Tecumseh, even down south, you got Zapata and Pancho Villa leading revolutions, so, the Red Sticks. What's that?
And we got Little Crow up here.
And the Red Sticks, they were the Creek army that totally rebelled against, the Europeans. Just Google Red Sticks, the Red Sticks War. It's about down south in Alabama, the southeastern states. And so activism and revolution is just an inherent part of indigenous culture, so rebellion is in our blood. It's in our DNA. It's just a part of who we are. And the struggle still continues. Natives are still fighting for their rights, preserving their land and language and culture. So the fight continues. So I thought that panel was very interesting, fascinating, very inspiring. I was like, hell yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I'm glad you didn't compare us to the Ewoks. That's what I was waiting for.